Hi, my name is Tristan Salem, and I am giving my final research presentation, and it is over the correct running form over the incorrect running form. And so at first I just wanted to start off with some personal experiences and how they've affected me throughout my running. So I've ran for the past probably 8 years. I ran in high school, and then I've also ran in college. And throughout that, I've discovered that my running form is very hard on my body because I run flat-footed instead of the correct form, which would be of rolling my foot as I run. From not using the correct form, it has caused many injuries and maybe not the best result of my training and from results of races. And so I just kind of wanted to bring in my own personal experience of how not using the correct running form has affected me and my training. It's put me out in many seasons of racing. I got a stress fracture this year. I got a stress fracture last year. I've had knee problems. They call them runner's knee. It's just, there's a lot of different contributing factors that can affect running and your race results. The correct running form would also be just a little bit of a lean. You don't want to be straight up. You don't want your arms up too tight. You want to have them low. You want to be relaxed. And you want to make sure that your strides are even. You don't want to be overstriding, because if you overstride, you can also heel strike, and then you can mess up your form worse, cause injuries. And then later on, we're just going to talk about how incorrect form can also cause poor race results. Not poor, but not as best as what they can be. And so that's just a few contributing factors of how form can affect everything. Another contributing factor can be how shoes affect you. I was going to go make this one main factor, but I decided to focus more on form than shoes. But shoes are also a super important factor into running, because not enough cushion, you can cause, if you have bad form and bad shoes, it's all just adding up. And so that's just a little bit of other factors that we have to look into when looking at form. So I just want to give a little background at first, and I wanted to mention how the common practice of incorrect running form could be contributing to poor races, as well as be the cause of injuries. I kind of mentioned that before, how it can be a contributing factor. The knowledge gap comes from individuals not knowing how to run correctly. Many just think, oh, it's a natural thing and I can just run. There actually is a little bit of a technique to it. It's not as like baseball, when you have to have correct angle, correct everything, correct catch. It is natural, but there also is a technique to it. Many people don't know the normal gait pattern or the biomechanic principles that go aligned with it to make it into the correct running form. It is natural. It's kind of both ways. You just got to find out which works best for you and which is the most correct way. I did a little research, and I found that Benson and his partner observed a race, and they discovered that 20% of runners that ran slower than a 40-minute 10K, they had an overstride. So in my opinion, if those runners could fix that overstride, their times could be even faster. And that's kind of just what I wanted this research to be about, is to focus on those runners that have incorrect form and see if they can fix it and see if those times would be faster. 60% of runners experience an injury severe enough to sideline them from an activity. That overstride that I just mentioned can cause an injury so bad that they would be out for the whole season, like how I was this year. Correcting running form could contribute to less injuries and faster race times, and that's just kind of what I want to look at whenever we're looking at this research project. The purpose of this research is to analyze and determine whether those who run with correct running form have better race results than those with incorrect form. This is going to be used to discover the most effective way to run for an individual and for the individuals to race to their full potential. And the full potential being full potential as their best races and as being not injured. And so the methods of this research project would include 14 runners. I would want them to be experienced runners, just so we can they have experience while they're running and training, so they're not just come out of this kind of just throwing them in there, because throwing them in there isn't the best option. So there's going to be 14 runners, and we're going to train them over a month span. At the first day of the month, they're going to start with a mile time trial just to see where they're at. And then we're going to split them up into two groups. There's going to be a group of 7 that run with the correct running form, and then there's going to be another group that runs with the incorrect form. And they'll train for a month, and they will each run with the same training throughout the whole month. There'll be 5 days of running, and then 1 day of off training as well, cross training and off day. I made up a plan, an exercise program that I'll mention here in a little bit. Throughout the month, they'll be analyzed and see the progression, and at the end of the month, the runners will run another time trial just so that they can compare each of them from the initial first mile from the second final time trial, so that they can compare the two results, and then they compare with the results as the other groups as well, seeing who ran the better times and seeing if there is a difference of times with the runners that ran correctly or the runners that ran incorrectly. And also, if the athletes are injured during this, we'll also take that into consideration. So how the exercise program would be is they're first going to build a 5-day foundation. So as I said, we're going to run 5 days a week for 1 month, 1 day of cross training and 1 day of completely off. And I want to throw in some strength training, which will be core in there as well. So for example, what I made is Monday would be 3 miles, Tuesday would be a 2-mile tempo because you kind of want to get some speed in there and you get your heart rate up. Wednesday would be cross training, that's where you can bike. Thursday would be 3 miles, Friday would be 2 miles, but there would be strides, and then Saturday would be completely off, and then Sunday would be your longer day, because you always want to throw a longer day in to help them with their heart rate again. The expected outcome is for the 7 runners that ran with the correct form will have better results in the time trial than the runners who ran with the incorrect form. And also considering that the group 1 that ran with correct form will have less injuries than the group with that ran with the incorrect form, taking all that into consideration. And so why this is so important to me is because as a runner, I've gotten injured many years in a row, and if there's a way to help correct it or a way to be less accident prone or less prone to injury, then of course I would want to be able to do that as best as possible as I can. That's why it's so important to me, is because running is so important in my life, but the significance of running is actually in everyone's life, because running is the fundamental form of a human locomotion. So to kind of break that down, running is used in everything that athletes do. You run in baseball, you run in football, you run in softball, you run in soccer. Running is a fundamental human locomotion because you're doing that in every sport that you're in. And I think this study could draw attention to the most, one of the most important movement patterns in sports, and it's mostly overlooked a lot. My coach personally is just like, oh, they have bad form, but I'm not going to correct them. I think we need to stop and actually look at runners and look at athletes and look at their form and correct it before it becomes just a common practice, because it could reduce injuries and it could also improve runners' race results. And I think that is just one thing that we need to take into consideration, that we need to look at and we need to analyze and we just need to determine. And that is the end of my presentation.